All right. All right. Greetings. Welcome back to Blackbird News, where everything is connected. How y'all doing? Good to see you. What? Saw some comment. Is that real? Stupid said Trump was arrested in Florida last night. I'm trying to look it up and I didn't see anything. Is that a real story? I mean, that'd be kind of major. I don't think he was arrested, but is that true? I can't see anything, but then again, you know how searches are these days. I see arrest warrant for Donald Trump from the Economic Times, but then I just don't see. I don't see anything. So I don't know. Is that real? Are you pulling people's legs? What are you doing? What are you doing? My sound is funky. Oh, hold on. Check. Is that back? Is it back? Thanks for letting me know. Sometimes the sound freaks out. All right, we're live on Rockfin, YouTube, call in. Yeah, I know the trick. I know the trick to make it sound better. I don't see anything about Trump being arrested. So I don't know. If anybody has any news on that, let me know. But this is interesting. So I guess we're going to try and have a panel tomorrow. We'll do we'll do the usual like Friday fix thing, but I'll try and just just putting a shout out to the people. If you want to, I guess, get into like a panel discussion, right? On Callin, just get on to Callin, and I'll see if I can just kind of figure it out as we go along. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your friend Max. Trump should have been arrested. I don't know. Did they actually find documents? There's actually a little dispute around whether they found something of value or I don't know. I don't know. Guys, can you see the super chat on the YouTube? I turned it on, or at least I thought I turned it on. If you guys can see it, let me know.
Unknown caller.
Stop. I only get. I only get. Okay, super chat is there. Okay, cool. Right. So you can super chat on YouTube now. And on Rockfin and on buymeacoffee.com/blackbearnews and leave me a note there. It's probably one of the better ways to contribute to the show. All right. Well, this is interesting. John Bolton says this is just interesting on its own, right? John Bolton. Sorry. Hey, all right. I got my first super chat in over a year. Thanks, Obsolete Optics. I appreciate it. Stefan Senfberg says, hello, I'm here for the risk assessment of the Earth. Is this the right chapter? It is. It is. You're right. Well, I'm just talking about some things before I get there, but we will talk about that for sure. Risk assessment is key. I want to talk about. Somebody said something about watch the climate brawl between Tony Heller, which he was a famous climate denialist, and another Gordon Cutney, I think was the climate scientist that he debated. It was bad. I mean, I listened to about 30 minutes of it, and that's all I could take. The climate scientist didn't do a great job of. He's, for one thing, he's just very stodgy and very professorial, and he didn't really have a lot of good counters. Although, but he kind of came at it from the angle of like, well, you're just a denialist and the whole scientific community is against you. And it's like, dude, you can't say stuff like that. That's not the way that you can pick them apart a little better than that. So I found it lacking in the count. But Tony Heller is just ridiculous in a lot of levels. But I'll talk about that too. All right, so I'm going to play this quickly. We'll get through this, and then we will go on to talking about climate stuff. All right, but John Bolton, famous lunatic who has been a was he head of the DOD, or he's been, he's like he's a war hawk. He's a war hawk, and right, creative experiments. Those former Exxon climate scientists should have started their own climate research companies. John Bolton is a war hawk, and he says that Trump is a bad candidate and that he's going to run for president with Mike Pompeo or something like that, which is just wholly ridiculous. But we'll listen to this. But it gets weirder. I didn't really want to get stuck too far on this, but he's the answer to Trump running for president on the GOP side, which again is wholly ridiculous. Because this guy, for one thing, he's not going to go anywhere. These people are not going to be the candidates for the Republican side. But let's listen to this.
News there. You are essentially telling us that you would consider getting into the 2024 race.
Absolutely. I think to be a presidential candidate, you can't simply say, I support the Constitution. You have to say, I would oppose people who would undercut it. We used to have a thing in the House of Representatives called the House Un-American Affairs Committee. I think when you challenge the Constitution itself the way Trump has done, that is un-American.
Let's stay here for a moment. Just walk me through your thinking. What does your timeline look like? What would cause you to cross into saying what you're saying now and actually being a declared candidate for president?
Look, all of the potential candidates know what Trump has said. This is no secret to anybody. I don't see why they aren't saying it right now. I think the voters, the Republican voters, people who choose the Republican nominee, nearly 95% disagree that Donald Trump is more important than the Constitution. I'm afraid there are some who would stick with Trump on this. What does a candidate have to lose by appealing to 95% of the base of the Republican Party? I actually think most Republican elected officials in Washington disagree with Trump on this, but they're intimidated. This is the time where there's strength in numbers. The more people who tell the truth, the easier it is for everybody else.
So what do you have to see that would make you say, now is the moment that I am going to declare my candidacy?
I'd like to see Sherman-esque statements from all the potential candidates. If I don't see that, then I'm going to seriously consider getting in.
And what is your timeline, Ambassador Bolton?
Well, I think it's going to have to be pretty short. We've already got one declared candidate for president in the Republican Party who doesn't believe in the Constitution. This is
yeah, whatever. I mean, I can't even really listen to this. It's wholly ridiculous. And the funny thing is that they're interviewing him on MSNBC. This man used to be I think he was the Secretary of Defense for Trump. So this man worked for Trump. And, he worked for Trump. It's ridiculous. Okay, so Trump, let me just run it down real quick. Trump won because he was like drain the swamp. Then when he hired John Bolton, everybody was like, what is he doing? John Bolton is the swamp, right? Everybody was like, huh? I don't understand. John Bolton is the swamp. He's a swamp creature. You know, one of the biggest swamp creatures ever. So, you know, I don't see it going very far. I think this is ridiculous. But the funny thing is that they're interviewing him on MSNBC, right? This guy is like he's just a swamp creature. But the silliest part of this story was actually that Caitlin Johnson said, if he gets into the race, I'm going to go full Joe Biden. And everybody was like, really? Are you sure you want to say that? He's like, she said, I'm going to go full Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, shit lib. Oh? I mean, that is so just ridiculous. I had to say, I responded and I said, so we're not in any war, because she thinks that he's a war hawk and that they'll start World War III. And I was like, this is the same as like, everybody saying Trump has the nuclear codes, right? It's the same thing, literally. And I'm like, and what happened after Joe Biden got into office? What happened? Oh, let's start some wars. Let's have a war. What's that old punk rock song? Is it Black Flag? Let's have a war. So we can all die. You can all die. Something like that. Whatever. It's a very punk rock song. Let's have a war. I think that's Black Flag. Right? Joe Biden got in office and said, let's have a war. Let's do it. So it's silly. Just silliness from Caitlin Johnson on top of silliness of John Bolton's. This is just clown world du jour. Right, John Bolton, I'm going to run for president. Everybody's like, sure about that? And then Caitlin Johnson's like, I'm going to support Joe Biden if he runs for president. Everybody's like, sure about that? I predict a riot. Yeah, that's good. Was that Black Flag or is that somebody else? I think I might be misquoting my punk rock lyrics. Anyways. That's a silly story. We started with that one, but I didn't want to spend too much time on that. These are just silly things happening in the world. Interglacial Optimist says grand solar morons. All right. Well, I'm glad you're all here. Thanks for hanging out with me. We're talking about this and that. We do talk about climate change quite a bit. We talk about all kinds of things on this channel. Sometimes, political day-to-day politics, and sometimes other things. We go all over the place. We're not limited to one thing. But I know that my thumbnail showed a anomaly map of temperatures. And so therefore that's not Black Flag. Am I wrong? Not Black Flag. Who? Oh, Fear. Thank you. You're right. It was Fear. Absolutely. Got it. I was messing up my punk rock bands. My mid 80s punk rock, early 80s. Actually, that's like early 80s punk rock. You're right. Anyways, that was silly. Oh, so I saw this temperature anomalies. So let's talk about Tony Heller and the climate brawls and the climate denialism and the actual climate, and let's talk about what's going on. I don't want to talk about Trump anymore. 6.6 C equals 43.88 Fahrenheit. Temps were 11.88 Fahrenheit higher than average. So this is from yesterday. Today, the Arctic anomaly was up to 6.6 C. from XR Cambridge. I mean, I don't see. I mean, these people showing like data and graphs. Data and graphs. And this to coalesce with what Poppy sent me this. In Utkvik, Alaska. Can never know when I'm saying that right. For a station with 100 plus years of observation to break a monthly record by 6 Fahrenheit and a seasonal record by 4 Fahrenheit is very significant. This is from the Washington Post. Don't talk to me about sources. Oh, of course they're not going to let me actually. I don't really want to subscribe to you guys. I wonder if I can get, hold on. I don't know. We might not even need the article, right? We know it's significant. Creative Experiment says, I thought libertarians love data and graphs. Only when they go against the thing that they're saying, right? See, here's another issue. I almost think, and I probably wouldn't be wrong in my thoughts, I almost think that this climate brawl, quote unquote, was a setup. Because the climate scientists didn't actually say, well, bring me your data and your evidence, right? Tony Heller was saying, I mean, he just had random kind of like overarching statements like, well, you're bringing up old information, or you're getting your information from the wrong places, or I don't know, or they just talked about everything. Like Tony Heller said, we know that there's more snow and ice cover than ever. And I was like, oh, come on, man. And so the climate scientists didn't say like, show me your data. Where are you getting your data? It would have been very simple for him to say, no, actually, like all of the data refutes that. And it would have been very, very simple to say, no, that's not true. Saying that like snow cover was more than it ever was. No, dude. Glaciers are melting all over the planet, right? Snowpack is down pretty much everywhere. That's why the aquifers are drying up. That's why we're having a drought. That's why, all this stuff. And so the door was wide open for this guy to go like, where are you getting your information from? And he didn't do that. So I was like, okay, I find this to be hinky. Oh, this guy was available for the climate brawl, but nobody else was. Probably because nobody wanted to spend time, or maybe Tony Heller didn't really actually want to speak with a climate scientist, like an actual climate scientist that might refute the things that he's saying. So maybe this was a setup, I think. I found it very lackluster. I found this climate brawl to be very lackluster. And Tony Heller, here's an interesting thing that I learned about Tony Heller today. Here's an interesting thing I learned about Tony Heller. He said he's a geologist. He went to school for geology. Okay, so where do geologists go to work often? The oil industry. Right? Geologists go to work for the oil industry. Why? Because the oil industry is constantly poking around underground. Who do they hire to poke around and look for oil? Geologists. I was like, oh, that's why. That's why you're a shill for the oil industry. Cheap, reliable fossil fuels. That came out straight out of Tony Heller's mouth, right? Cheap, reliable fossil fuels. Dude, you are a shill. You're a straight, yes, scum. Like, I can't think of any other word for him, but, I don't want to be too, mean about it. But like Tony Heller is, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to poke the holes in his arguments, but this, climate scientist just couldn't muster, anything but like, well, I just think that you're, climate denialists often say these things. Okay, dude, just, ask him for his sources. Geology is a hard science. Good one. Osama. Good one. Anyways, yeah, when I learned he's a geologist, I'm like, well, there you go. He works for he's got to be an oil industry person. It kind of connected the dots for me. I was like, I see how this fits together. Anyways, but what is we're seeing data and graphs here. And we see the data in the graphs every single day. We see the data in the graphs every single day. And so how can you possibly refute the data in the graphs? Right? I don't know, unless you have some kind of, magic secret information out there that nobody else has. I just, but this is stuff that you can say to people and they just will take it in and go, mm-hmm. I mean, the other interesting thing about this climate brawl was that the guy that was running the debate was also a climate, not a climate science believer. So, I don't know. I would like to see a different forum. I'd like to see, somebody actually debate him if they wanted to debate him. There's been actually plenty of debates anyways. What's the guy's name? Somebody help me out. There's a guy that's done plenty of back and forth with Tony Heller and pretty much, has a good take on what's going on. But yes, so we have these major anomalies. Oh, I was trying to look for a way to open up this. I was trying to see if I could open up this article. Let's see. Is it this? Somebody gave me a. There we go. Let's see if I can open it without jacking up all my settings and stuff. But these anomalies, here we go. Oh, no, they're not going to let me do it. Darn it. Well, I guess what we'll do here is something totally different. Something totally different. I mean, I don't think that we necessarily have to be in the Washington Post. Because other places will probably pick this up, I'm thinking. No? Anybody? Two days ago, Fox Weather. Well, hey, Fox News is covering this. Interesting. But this is from a couple days ago. We'll see if we get this. But we'll just go with the Post for now. It won't open up. I don't know why. I'm having issues, guys. Anyways, they have some major temperature anomalies going on in Alaska, in the Arctic. And it's saying something to us, which is danger, right? Danger. Oh, now that won't open up. This is very strange. I'm getting very strange search results. Let's try this one. Let's try this one. All right, we have Washington. Okay, here we go. Sometimes Brave doesn't work very well. Yahoo News. Here we go. All right. Okay, there we go. You try and you try and you try. Amid 24-hour darkness, Alaskan Arctic town reaches 40 degrees, setting all-time winter heat record. That's pretty significant. Has it been warm in the past? Sure. But they broke the record. And what is happening, if you're paying attention if you are paying attention, multi-aquaponics. Oh, interesting. If you are paying attention, you see that temperature records are falling every single year, and it seems to be every single year more temperature records fall for the last like 4 or 5 years. So something is indeed happening, right? If these temperature records fell and then you didn't hear about them anymore, but they're falling in the same places like over and over again, like the Arctic, like the Pacific Northwest, like England, like Russia, like Siberia, right? Places that are typically colder, on the colder side. And then you have like 1 year, oh, temperature record set. And then like 2 years later, oh, a new temperature record set. And then 3, same thing over and over. Wow, it is unseasonably warm for this part of the world over and over again. Year after year, right? Like not just like once, oh, an anomaly, it was really hot this year. That's not an anomaly. It's a trend, right? That's the difference between an anomaly and a trend. An anomaly is a, one-time occurrence, which is what, climate change disbelievers or non-believers try to do, is say like, well, this is, it was really hot today, but it was this hot, in 1963. Okay. But what you're leaving out is that like, well, they broke this record in this place where it was super hot today, is record-setting temperatures. It was also super hot last year and the year before that. Right? They seem to be breaking records every year. They seem to be reaching these high highs more and more frequently, over and over, year after year. What's going on? Is this a trend line? Is it getting warmer? Seems like it is. It's good to hear you talking about aquaponics, Stefan. I was talking about aquaponics the other day. We were talking about solutions. Cradle to cradle is the same in circular economy and the technosphere. All products are in the all right. I have to ask you what you think about aquaponics. I don't know. I'm not sure whether you're a fan or not. Anyways, there seems to be something going on, and I think that we have a very difficult time as human beings assessing the risk of climate change, right? And we talk about this all the time. Oh, I'm getting a comment from William. Oh, Tim says Lex Friedman had a debate with denier Bjorn Lomborg. How did that go, Tim? Was it good? Did it shed any light? Did it seem to, which way did it swing? But William is saying the unknown author of one memo. He's oh, hold on. I guess I got to open this this article because I can't tell what's going on here.
Pompeo said what? He said, we're not going to wait for Corbyn to win. If we think he's going to win, we're going to act. So that we made it clear that we will not accept democracy.
All right, Garland. Garland Nixon, is a good guy. Just listening to his show. Somehow it started playing when I went over here. Tobacco and oil industries use same researchers to sway public. Right. And this is what Tony Heller is about. And this is what, has been very frustrating to me in the repeating of, like, they're trying to put climate change in the same class as other, as other like wool pulling by the elites or by the people in charge or by the people in power, right? Like they they famously do, things to get people to believe things that are not true, right? But like they try to wrap climate change and climate science up into that same thing too. And what is frustrating is that they've actually got it backwards. They're for lack of a better term, like useful idiots, actually spreading the propaganda of the people who have put out that, the thing about climate change being a debate or skepticism, or like, I don't think it's it's not really a thing, right? This thing has been put out there for years, to try and stop people from questioning what we're doing on the planet. As far as, it's not just burning fossil fuels, but questioning what we're doing to the planet as far as just ecological destruction, all of those things together. I don't think you can separate the two. You can't separate ecological destruction, from climate change, even though, some people would say they're two different things. But they go hand in hand. Anyways, yes. So the climate, the fossil fuels are a product that fuels our entire civilization. And this is one of the biggest things that nobody wants to address, is that our entire civilization is made possible by cheap, reliable energy, fossil fuels, right? It's made possible by fossil fuels. If you take the fossil fuels away, we don't have much left, right? If you took away the fossil fuels tomorrow, on a dime, a lot of people would perish on this planet, which I'm not, I don't wish for that to happen. I don't want that to happen to people, but that's just the reality of it, right? And our society and our civilization was made possible by these, these wonderful magical products that are also not good for the planet. And also, the things that these products power are also not good for the planet, meaning the people and all the things. Right? So hand in hand, all of these things are all closely linked together. And so nobody wants to address this, and nobody wants to stop the train, because the train is a money train. It's a money train. It's a civilization train. It's everything is all wrapped up. We're humans doing crazy good stuff, and we're look at us go, and technology is awesome, and technology is awesome, I have to admit. Tim says, I didn't watch the debate. Yeah, it's hard to have the energy. I watched the Tony Heller thing for a little while, trying to learn something, trying to see like, okay, is something new going to happen in here? And I was very disappointed. Not so much in Tony Heller. I mean, Tony Heller was just typically saying the same stuff. But I was like, this climate scientist is trash, because he could have mopped the floor with this guy, and he didn't. He just was like very passive. Anyways. Actually, Slava, I don't necessarily agree with your take, but that's fine. Whatever. Stefan says the money train is also based upon throwing away all our devices frequently. Yes. True. Right? Consumerist life. Let me read this comment from William. Sorry. The unknown author of one memo, who once worked for Standard Oil Company, Inc. of New Jersey, suggested scientists for an advisory committee study the health effects of smoking. I am giving below the names of the individuals who you might consider as potential members of the medical advisory committee for the tobacco industry, as related to its current medical problem. The person wrote to the Tobacco Research Board, alluding to building evidence that smoking caused health problems. Both industries hired public relations companies Hill and Knowlton, Inc., an influential New York firm, for outreach as early as et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you guys get the idea. Listen. Famously, here's a famous story about Oh, North, I see you. Hold on, give me a second, North. Famously, and I've covered this multiple times, before they took lead out of gasoline, right? There was a, one of the biggest oil lobbies. I forget the name of the lobby. It's like the American Petroleum Institute or something like that, right? Lead was added to gasoline in order to make car driving more palatable, because before lead was added to gasoline, cars were really knocky and loud, and they didn't like that. So they were trying to figure out something to make the gas burn. This is, early industrial days, or, early automotive days. They were trying to find something to quiet the engines down. And what they found was lead made the gas engines burn much quieter. But they continued to put lead in the gasoline even after famously scientists, one guy worked at Caltech, figured out that lead was literally saturating the entire planet and it was causing big problems. And this lobbying group, the petroleum lobbying group, had, basically ruined the careers of there were a couple scientists that were trying to push this out and put this out in the world and let people know, hey, we're being poisoned. And they ruined their careers, right? This very powerful oil lobby ruined their careers. It's kept, this information under wraps for decades until, like I think it was in maybe the 60s or so, until people were until more and more scientists came out and said, hey, we're poisoning ourselves. And it took a long time to get lead out of gasoline. It took until the 90s, I think, for the last, leaded gasoline to be produced. It took a long time. Took another few decades for lead to get out of gasoline, mostly. But that leaded gasoline destroyed people's lives and destroyed the environment and really just caused a lot of problems, right? Which is exactly what, fossil fuels in general are destroying people's lives, right? It's, but the oil lobby, very powerful, probably one of the biggest corporations on the planet, right? Or the biggest, right? Very powerful big oil, right? So it's funny, right? Like you have one side of people that can totally, I say this all the time, one side of the argument that can totally see that big pharma is bad and, they're doing the bad things, like they can totally see that. But, they think that like climate science is a big industry and that, money is funding all the climate science. I can tell you, sir, that big oil has way deeper pockets and is way more interested in continuing the oil producing and using than the climate science industry. They're not that big. The climate science industry is not like some behemoth big climate. No, it's not. I'm sorry to tell you that. It's wholly ridiculous. But people really believe this stuff. And then on the other side, fairly on the climate science side, climate changers can totally see that like a big oil is ruining the planet and they're not good and they're not good people, but they totally believe big pharma. They're like, oh, big pharma, please give me what you got because you're the science, right? No, they're not. They're both bad. They're both bad. Slava, I was just breaking that down for you, right? Anti-vaxxers are not the same as denialists, climate denialists. Not the same at all, right? Why? Because, right, anti-vaxxers understand that, you might be getting, misled a little bit by the big, by huge, deep-pocketed corporations that want to sell you stuff. Right? That's all I'm going to say on that. Not the same thing. These are not the two. Don't conflate these subjects, right? But people do it all the time. People on the right and the left. People on the left, right? Oh, climate denialists are the same as Nope, they're not the same. And people on the right, oh, the pro-vaxxers are the same as the climate. Nope, no, they are not. There are two different subjects with two different contexts, totally different parameters, and they are not the same subjects whatsoever. But people do this all the time. But guess what? You win the prize. You're lucky. You're in rarefied air where you can see like big oil is bad and big pharma is bad. You're here. You're here with me. All right. North, how you doing?
Yeah, man. I like that story about the scientists back in the 40s there. That was, maybe it was the 50s. It was funny how all the dangers of lead paint, and it was funny. They used almost the exact same tactics against him as we hear with like climate change now, where it's like, well, you can't prove that lead hasn't been ubiquitous in our environment since the beginning of time. That was like their main argument. Like, yeah, you're finding lead everywhere.
Well, basically, like the climate is always changing argument.
Exactly.
Right. The lead is always there.
Right. Yeah. And so the guy had to go to the North Pole, which probably wouldn't be true today. If you went to the North Pole, there would probably be lead there as well. But back in the 50s, it hadn't permeated, far off places like that yet. And he said, look, there's no lead in this ice going back before the time we started using lead in our gasoline, and basically proved it that way. And then they did basically what you said. They just tried to ruin his career and people's careers just like him, and paid off quote unquote scientists to be on their side. And then they use the exact same tactics for cigarettes and now climate change today.
Sure.
And the funny thing is, if you one of the main arguments against, or when people are like denying climate change, they'll say like all the past predictions, which weren't actually science predictions, they were just like magazines and stuff. But they'll say something like, yeah, and the ozone layer, remember when scientists were freaking out about the ozone layer? Whatever happened with that? And it's like, did you actually look into it? Because we fixed it. We fixed it doing the exact same thing that we should be doing with climate change. We had an international agreement that most of the countries signed on to. And the only reason why it took in that case, and it's so much harder in climate change, was that all the industries that relied on the chemicals that were destroying the ozone layer could readily find a supplement. They're like, oh, I guess we don't have to use this in our product mix. We can use this instead. That's what.
Right, which is the same with gasoline too, right? Like, so, they finally admitted that lead was bad and it was poisoning people.
Yeah.
And when they took it out, it's like, well, it doesn't really change the, we can take the lead out and people are still going to burn gasoline, right? Or, technology had advanced enough to the stage where they could take it out and nobody would notice a difference. But
yeah,
right.
So it's quite telling that like when we have a problem that big, that's like worldwide, we can solve it with like what somebody would call authoritarian global tyrannical rules. Sure. It's just like, but because it didn't bother business back then, and nobody made that argument. That argument is just being made now because the biggest corporations in the world are like, this is going to destroy us, or at the very least affect our bottom line. And as a corporation, we cannot abide that.
Sure, for sure. Absolutely. And if you follow that through to recent history, right, like oil companies have been a part of literally like all the studies and findings and all the panels, right? Like, all the COPs, right? Paris agreements, right? The early days when James Hansen was like, when they realized like climate change was a thing and it was really happening, and they were like, well, what should we do about it? Well, let's have a roundtable, right, with like government agencies, and some of the people in the government agencies that were part of the roundtable were like bought off by big oil, right? So they were like, no, we're going to water down the agreement to this. We're going to water down like what the statement is around this, because we really don't want this to come out as like oh shoot, we're really screwed this time, right? Like, so oil was all up in that, all up in those conversations, right? And they have been through the whole, that's why nothing is happening. That's why nothing ever gets done, because
there was something like 100 or 150 oil lobbyists at the last COP meeting. Right? Like they're still there. And And like to your point earlier about like scientists, like actual scientists, just being terrible spokespersons for their own science because that's not their job. You know, all through the 2000s, when you would have a 2-panel debate and there would be an actual scientist on the other side, you would have a paid spokesperson whose whole job is to like be convincing and knows nothing about the science. And then when you finally had somebody like what's his name, Bill Nye, who is a good speaker, the first argument that climate denialists would say is like, "Oh, he's not a scientist." It's like, well, it's the anti-climate change side has never been scientists. It's always been paid spokespersons.
Well, isn't that? I mean, that's kind of the same argument that anybody uses when they want to shoot down your part. Like, are you a medical doctor? Are you a scientist? Are you a, it's like, well, look, you don't have to necessarily have a degree to be able to read, right? To read studies or to gather information, right? Like you can do that. Yeah. People can do that. Yeah, man. Yeah, anyways, it's kind of crazy. And I find it kind of frustrating, but, thanks for the call, man.
For sure. Yeah, dude.
All right. It just, we're so far away from really understanding what's going on. And that has been by design, right? That has been by design. And now we are seeing the act, right? Like for years and years. And this is the other thing, another thing that like the denialist crowd say is that, oh, they were predicting, the end of the ice or the end of the world or the end of, whatever, like for years. And where is it? Well, it's actually right here. It's actually here and now. The things are happening now. That's another thing that Tony Heller said that I was like, Tony Heller said something about, oh, well, scientists have said, the frequency of like extreme weather events or something like that has gone down. I was like, dude, that is not even scientific. That's not on, and the climate scientists just said, didn't even rebut that. Didn't even say, where did you get that information? Right. He just let it go. That's why I think it was a bit of a setup. All right. Let's pause. Let's pause for a second. We've got all kinds of opinions in the chats. Let's try and be, fair and not too, not too hostile towards each other. But, debate is good, and debate isn't always necessarily nice, to use a little better word. But let's try and be, at least cool. I'm not saying that anything is going on in the chats. I'm just saying we have differences of opinion. That's all right. Yeah, it's not really worth it, Poppy. I wouldn't say that it is worth it. Hold on one second. Well, let's take this call from William. How you doing, William?
Can you hear me, Kev?
Yes.
I just put an article in live chat. Mike Pompeo, hey, melting ice is good for the Arctic, opening up the Arctic right. Shipping lanes. It's not happening.
well, yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. It's not happening. Oh, yes, it is. I mean, there are the Arctic shipping lanes start earlier every year. Right, there's an open sea in the Arctic where ships can go. They start earlier every year and they go, later into the year every year. So, where are you getting your? I mean, that should just tell you. Yeah. Anyways, and how are you refuting that the glaciers aren't melting? Like, there's pictures, dude. There are pictures of real-time pictures of glaciers like 40 years ago and what they look like today. And like those pictures exist. You can't just make stuff up. where you can't be a climate scientist and just let that slide. Like, wait a minute, hold on, stop. That's completely false. Like, you can't do that.
Well, I mean, hey, President Trump was for his permit for his seawall in his Scottish golf course. In the application, he cited rising sea levels due to climate change. I mean, or whoever applied in his behalf. You know what I mean? You know,
exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Well, you know, what about that? Like, it just the climate non-believers have it's very thin. You know, their arguments are very thin, but apparently very persuasive, because I think that people just would prefer to believe that story. Honestly, like I don't even think it's based on science. Obviously, it's not based on science. It's based on emotionality, right? It's based on like, well, I don't want to believe that, you know, the life as we know it right now could be greatly altered because of what we've done to the planet. Like, and it's just an easier story to believe. Like, everything's fine and everything seems fine right now. It's right. We still have a level of normalcy where you could, you know, go, oh yeah, I wake up every morning, the sun shines and the clouds are moving and there's still birds, but plenty of people see like, well, where did all the insects go? Plenty of people see like, wow, there's a lot of trees dying in my neighborhood. Plenty of people see like, oh, I'm having a hard time growing food because of what the seasons are all jacked up now. Like, plenty of people can see that there are obvious things happening. But if you don't have to look at that, if you spend your day in an air-conditioned bubble, going from your air-conditioned house into your air-conditioned car to your air-conditioned office job or whatever, like, then you can avoid actually, you know, taking notice of these things.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's the plan, according to Yuval Harari, World Economic Forum, which may come up tomorrow, where, you know, where will people be spending their time in the future as AI continues to take over? In the meta-universe and on drugs. He literally said that. It's on medications in the meta-universe. Ay. So, you know, devoid and separated from nature. Meanwhile, the forest fires aren't happening, right? No, or the superstorms or the super tornado alley activity. None of that's real.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it also, or if that's not real, if it is real, it's not climate change. It's like somebody sending the fires. HARP is causing the weather. It's just, you know, geoengineering is causing it all. Like, you know, something else. It's something else going on, and it doesn't really matter whether, you know, but those are the typical go-tos, right? Like, okay, so something is really crazy, you know, some crazy weather is really happening and you can see it and you're like, nah, but they made that happen. Okay, they made that happen, and that's, you know, so therefore you could just be like, nah, you know, I don't know.
Well, you know, Kev, there's an interesting double side to that. The other side is, we know, one can argue, due to deforestation, we've been terraforming the earth and continue to do it. Right. You know what I'm saying? That's not hard, far-fetched. And then there is cloud seeding. I mean, we know that happens. You know what I mean? They do whatever they use, silver oxides or whatever, to seed the clouds to try and create more precipitation and storms. So what happens is then, you know, there's a little bit of truth on this, but there's a lot of evidence on that, and then it all gets conflated and commingled, and there's no way to distill it out. Do you follow me?
Yep.
When you're in a debate with someone, do you see what I mean? Because they're going to go back to what they, you know, they're ace in their hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just never ends. You know.
I wish. Yeah, I've watched several debates, you know, about different topics, like on YouTube or whatever, and I never really find them very satisfying. Like, I never really feel like, oh, that person really made a great point. I always feel kind of like it's a lackluster format. You know, I just haven't seen one that was really good. If anybody has a good debate for me to watch where it looks like somebody really just like pow, 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 clean somebody's clock, like really brought the evidence to the point where the other person was like, all right, you know, but otherwise it usually just ends up being like either a bunch of yelling or just a bunch of like pretty boring back and forths where nothing is ever, you know, nothing ever really gets, you know, I don't know, whatever. Maybe that's just what debates are supposed to be. who knows? I like to see a good debate, but I just haven't seen one yet.
I think part of it is. Oh, you got to go. Okay,
no. Go. Yeah. Finish your thought, please.
Oh, I think the other part of it is we have these other things that people can cite that have happened through eternity, like volcanoes, like solar flares and sunspots. And so what I'm trying to say is, I finally, there's one fellow who's very intelligent and calls into call in a lot, and he's got an English accent, super on the ball about a lot of things. But whatever point he takes, he's definitely loaded with his studies and whatnot. And so no matter what study I point out, because I do my research, he's got the counter to it already. Yeah. You follow me? Well, that's his thing. And so he's a climate denier. And so theretofore, he's got all that evidence. And I've got my evidence. And you know what? Never in the middle shall we meet. So I finally said, well, what about we just agree that like maybe pollution's bad? Like the gyres in the ocean and the microplastics. And I mean, can we settle on something we could all agree on that's actually happening? You know what I mean? Yeah, like the cancer clusters, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've had these debates with people like that on Twitter, and it's just like, you're not going to change their mind, and they're not going to change your mind. So what's the point? You
exactly.
You got to put it out there somehow. And you got to hope that somebody maybe might stumble in and find the information and go and think about it, right? And take the information back and think on it. But I guess that's all you can do, really. And eventually the reality is gonna change people's minds too. That's why I think there's so many people that really understand that something is very wrong on the planet.
Yeah,
there really is a very deep, very like subconscious understanding that like things are not quite the way they used to be. Definitely, people understand, and definitely people know that something's going on, and so that I find that just nature itself is just showing people the truth, and then people will eventually go, "Oh, yeah, I see what's going on," right? Like, anyways.
Well, I finally realized the only way I got anywhere was when I tried to find some common ground on some things that would affect that other person personally. You know what I mean? Where then they could say, oh, yeah, well, I can see glyphosates can destroy my gut bacteria. Probably not a good thing I eat foods that have Roundup residue. You know what I mean? Commercial.
Right.
Try and eat more. And you know what? If more people ate organic, that would reduce a lot of groundwater problems and runoff problems and, loss of insects. You see what I'm saying? And so, in other words, just try. It's much more productive, I found, because I couldn't get anywhere any other way. And, I have a degree in resource economics. We've talked about a lot of alternative energy systems that have been oppressed, that because, the big guy's going to make money off it, all different things people can do in their individual lives. But finally I was like, no, none of that. I can't get anywhere with any of that unless I find a common ground and find a unity that people are concerned about. You see what I'm saying? Their own health,
totally.
Their own energy costs.
Totally.
How do you want to? Don't you want to reduce your own home energy costs? Consider net-free ventilation. Putting soffit vents in and more. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So
cool,
and that will reduce usage of fossil fuels. So we get to the same end. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
To the degree we can.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, William. I got to let you go. But I
know.
I'm going to respond to what you're just saying. But thank you, William.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right.
Take care.
Yeah, I actually wanted to respond to a couple of things in the Rockfin chat real quick. If y'all are still with me on Rockfin, hang out for a second. But what I was going to say to William was that there is a meeting place in the between the right and the left of the libertarians and the liberals or whatever, and that is. There is kind of a meeting place in the fact that like everybody understands like, well, we should all grow our own food. We should all, grow organic food. We should all kind of try to get off the grid. Like there is an understanding there that like that is the way to go. And so that is a good convergence. It's a good convergence. Yeah, it was a good call from William. I agree. Obsolete optics. So something I want to respond to. Teresa Andrea said they are attempting to forbid filming of the lakes that are losing their water. Is that true? Lake Mead, Lake Shasta, and many other major potable waterways are each down 100 plus feet. The water is disappearing. Absolutely. Yes, I saw Lake Shasta with my own eyes a couple months ago. And there's guys that are making videos of Lake Mead all the time. But is that right? I didn't know that. They are attempting to forbid filming of the lakes? What? Is that right? Also, another comment from Teresa. Close to 15 years ago, a small pharma company was granted the use of 1 million gallons of water per day in Rhode Island. This after enacting eminent domain of people due to reservoir expansion, which hasn't yet occurred. The residents were hounded off their properties for 30 years. Wow. Hold on. I got to actually see if this is I got to look this up and see if I can find it. But I've seen some videos, some guys that make videos about Lake Mead all the time. But maybe my Brave searches aren't very good. I'm sorry to say that. I wish they were better. I can't see anything about it, but I haven't heard that. But that is pretty crazy if they're not letting people film or show people what's going on there. Huh. I'll have to check out Vegas D-Tex channel regarding Lake Mead. Okay. Let's see if I can find that. I actually got to go, so I can't really can't do this online right this second. But I will look into that. And then there was another thing in the chat. I guess that was it. But yes, the reservoirs are going down, down, down. Oh, that's the other thing. Humpty Dumpty, his channel was taken down. Is that right? Or did he take his own channel? Is that right? Is Hambone off? Did something happen to Hambone? Anybody confirm it for me? Anybody? Give me a sign or a signal if that's true. That would really be a shame, because I know he's been doing his channel for like a long time. Hambone got the axe. What did he say though? Like, what did he do? Collapse Chronicles? What did he say to get him banned? Wow. Or himself banned. Oh, he intentionally took his channel down. Oh, okay. Well, then that actually makes more sense. I mean, I took my channel down for a while on YouTube. And that was on purpose. Collapse Chronicles is still up. Humpty Dumpty Tribe is gone. Okay. Just checking that out. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I appreciate you hanging out with me every day on these here interwebs. Before I go, you can support me at buymeacoffee.com/BlackBearNews. You can Rockfin tip me. You can also YouTube tip me now. I have super chats are working again on YouTube. All right. And thanks for hanging out. Tomorrow we'll try and do a panel. So if you want to jump on, I don't even know what we're talking about yet. It's going to be a surprise panel. What are we talking about? yeah, so we'll talk about whatever tomorrow, but or maybe we'll figure out a topic. We'll just do it. We'll do it live. So tomorrow, hanging out with us, and we'll try and get a bunch of people on the chat all together on Callin. So you can get on the Callin app if you want to do that. All right, thanks, guys. See you tomorrow, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard. Peace.